Good afternoon. I'm Major Zavak, and I want to introduce you to ECE, which is the Enterprise Computing Environment. This is an enduring program, or soon-to-be enduring program, which will enable the Army's Army strategy to move to the cloud. So right now, the team is writing the requirements document for ECE, Enterprise Computing Environment, and it's constantly being improved upon as we learn more about how we want to employ the cloud, how we want to fight from the cloud. ECE comprises operating systems. It's made of a lot of software applications, enterprise services, and cloud technologies from multiple commercial service providers, all standardized and hosted on existing Army enterprise data centers and regional hub nodes that are in the Common Services Infrastructure, CSI. It's another capability, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. But in turn, ECE will standardize all Army enterprise data centers to include the capital, the equipment contained within the data, the server stacks, so that units deployed anywhere in the world can reach back to any one of these Army enterprise data centers, synchronize their edge node stacks at the tactical edge, and access the same set of data, computing, and networking capabilities. A unit shouldn't have to be deployed trying to reach back to multiple data centers, because one data center, which should single-handedly be able to take care of that unit with all the information and data it requires. So the idea is that ECE will provide the warfighting applications across the unified network and throughout the deployment process. That is, from the enterprise, home station, to the tactical environment, to include having mission command and route. So ECE combines multiple computing environments, from enterprise to tactical, can't stress that enough, of which the tactical computing environment includes the mounted mission command platforms and server stacks that units will employ to access their required data and information that's hosted on-prem or in the local network. Or they could reach back to a data center if they've been out of sync with their data, they haven't had any connectivity in a few hours, and they need to synchronize the information on-prem with the cloud. So earlier I mentioned the data centers within the Common Services Infrastructure, CSI, which is another capability with ECE software serving as the middleware for both the enterprise and tactical infrastructures. Combining the two in a unified network makes up Common Services Infrastructure, CSI. But this is more about ECE. But C-Army, Cloud Army is how CSI will manage compute and storage using multiple commercial service providers. So in the meantime, while the Army eventually migrates to an Army private cloud concept, because ultimately that's where we want to be, this concept is a hybrid technology, hybrid cloud strategy, since we expect to use the commercial providers in conjunction with a privatized, government-owned, government-operated cloud and enterprise data center. So now let's turn to some of the key attributes, some of the requirements of ECE. ECE supports the ability to remotely store data from the tactical systems, like the ones I mentioned at the edge nodes, in the cloud. So it'll provide the essential services for archiving, replication, synchronization across all enterprise and tactical nodes, and supports the integration of cloud in information domains. So ECE will also facilitate artificial intelligence, machine learning technologies that will expedite and facilitate the data-driven decision-making needed on the battlefield. And it'll provide the secure application repository and a development center of which to rapidly develop custom applications, refactor and manage existing software in support of DevSecOps with Army units while the software is in use or being assessed at a current soldier touch point. So though ECE will be a capability that's always available as it sits within the unified network, it will be dependent on the infrastructure and data transport to be accessible to all Army units. So ECE will extend services and resources to the edge to streamline future warfighting applications by creating that cloud ecosystem in which all computing environments and applications, both enterprise and warfighting, can be hosted in the cloud. And like ECE, the Army hybrid cloud ecosystem is only a part of the unified network. Ultimately, this emphasizes the importance of interdependency among the concerted efforts of ECE, CSI, that's Common Services Infrastructure, the Unified Network Transport Modernization, and Cyber Operations. So ECE is providing that platform, that software as a service coverage to include operations and maintenance of hybrid cloud, whereas CSI provides the infrastructure as a service and will cover the infrastructure to include tactical services infrastructure, the common operating picture, warfighting applications, and compute and store at the tactical edge. So in conclusion, there are cloud efforts and experiments across the Army. A lot of units have taken the initiative to experiment with how they want to use cloud, how they want to lease other servers, but there are no enduring programs of records that keep these efforts aligned and funded. That's where ECE comes in. So this is a solution that's Army-wide, so units won't have to perform their own experimentations. ECE will be that enduring program that funds the Army migration to the cloud and set the conditions for a cloud-native Army. With that being said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Patrick Marshall.
Good afternoon. Patrick Marshall, ACOM Networks and Services, Doden Ops. And so as you think about what we've heard about the unified network, obviously there are a lot of new kits coming into the network, whether that be SATCOM kits, LOS kits, or software-defined radio kits. All of them will have to be planned, configured, managed, defended, for the unified network, for the G6. And that's really the goals of unified network operations. I think it's a key component of the entire unified network. It's a huge endeavor. And so from a requirement standpoint, I know General Morrison gave a great speech on what UNO is and how effective it needs to be in order for the unified network to be effective for warfighters. And so some of the things that are key to UNO is to establish this fully integrated suite of Doden Ops tools. So as these systems come into the network, our goal for UNO is to be able to integrate the planning, the configuring, the managing of that kit into this program. Another thing that UNO would do is we're going to divest of a lot of tools that are out there today. Today on the enterprise, there are over 270 enterprise NetOps tools and at least 170 on the tactical. And so UNO is definitely going to reduce those numbers considerably, as well as give us an innovative tool set that the 6 can use to manage a lot of these new capabilities. Secondly, UNO is going to bring in some modeling and simulations, some AI to do some predictive analytics on the network to help the 6 with understanding the health of the network and being able to defend the network with some predictive analytics capabilities. So from a requirement standpoint, we developed the UNO IS ICD back in FY21. It created an IT box with 3 subordinate requirements definition packages of requirements. General Morrison came back at us back in FY22 and said, we need to make that 6, and we need to start focusing at the echelons. And so today, UNO IS-ICD and that IT box is now 6 RDPs. In FY23, we were able to get 3 of the 6 RDPs approved, as John mentioned earlier. Lower tier tactical, upper tier tactical, and identity and credentialing and access management. So those requirements are approved. PEOC 3T is the OPR for the UNO program. They are actively involved with selecting vendors, getting ready to do prototyping, and looking for solutions for lower tactical, upper tactical, and identity and credentialing and access management. And so lower tier tactical is going to consolidate tools at the battalion. As General Morrison said, move complexity up to the division, and so there will be an integrated platform there at the battalions and below to help them manage a lot of the lower tier networking capabilities, and that's down at that level. The upper tier tactical will be inclusive of all the different capabilities for the upper tier. You're thinking about scout terminals, you're thinking about Tropo, you're thinking about SATCOM, the new LOS systems. all will be included into the UTT capability. And then, obviously, ICAM is all about creating trusted identities. And so moving away from a role-based kind of access to the network to an attribute-based. So ICAM would now kind of control who accesses data, who accesses applications on the network, as well as who actually accesses the network at all. And that's what ICAM will bring to the table. I think Mr. Garcia just mentioned recently about the Army Directive. The Army Directive 2402 that's talking about enabling modern software development and acquisition practices. And so what that does is it changes the UNO program slightly from a requirements perspective. The last 3 RDPs will now transition to what we call software capability needs statements. And my team is actively doing that. We were ready to go with RDPs for Army staffing, and the Army came back and said, nope, we want those in a capability needs statement. And so since June, since that directive have came out, we have actively started doing that. And so the last remaining RDPs for UNO will be UNO Strategic, and they will help us to innovate a lot of the tools up in ArtCyber, Netcom, and being able to allow them to interact with the tools of the tactical, making that common picture that General Morrison talked about, the visualization. And so that will be the first one that we come out with on first quarter 25. And then the last capability needs statement will be managed data. I know we've talked a lot about zero trust, the Army moving to a data centricity type architecture. UNO managed data will be that capability that allows a lot of that. It's going to be working with the tactical data fabric, what we're doing with Gable Nimitz, but it's going to be able to give us the ability to see data flows, to know what data silos are across the network, and we're going to use a metadata strategy to do that. And so those requirements will come out probably around November, and then PEO C3T will have all the necessary requirements in order to formulate this unified network program and start building kit and start developing kit so that we can command and control this network. And so in summary, that's kind of what UNO is. I thought General Morrison did a great job this morning, kind of explaining where he wants to go with it. And so with that, I will turn it over to Major Amy for ACM Tactical Radio.
All right, good afternoon. I know I'm the only thing standing between you and the social hour, so I'll try to be brief and brilliant. So Major Phil Amy, the Capability Integration and Management Branch Chief for ACM-TR. If you look to my left, your right, we have almost the full government representation from ACM-TR. So we have our new Director, Colonel Harrell, our Deputy, Mr. Brad Ashing, and then we have our new Ops, Phil 1L, and then we have Major Dom Adams. And then our soon-to-be Deputy, Major Rob Williams. So full team here in representation. If there's any too complex questions, I will direct it to the team there. But in all seriousness, really today want to inform you on the role that ACM-TR is playing in transitioning to a unified network. So one thing to note, the systems and capabilities that we deliver require increased survivability, higher mobility, and interface down at the soldier level, so at the tactical edge. During my brief today, I want to address a few key points. So really to discuss the capabilities and responsibilities that ACM-TR is responsible for, the approach that we use to get after those capabilities, our modernization strategy, and then what we are looking for from industry. So I hope to get after those 4 key points. First, we'll start off with kind of what we do. So we serve as the centralized manager and coordinator for capability development and activities associated with the following capabilities. So probably one of the more important capabilities that we're responsible for, you'll hear it quite a bit, assured voice. So what that means, it enables the operators in austere environments to gain and maintain vital voice communications that are secure, protected, reliable, robust, and predictable over extended distances. The next key capability that we manage is radio data networking. So think resilient but smaller throughput. The next capability is lower tier unified network operations for this. So think simple, intuitive management. Next capability is going to be tactical radio waveforms. So for this, we're looking at waveforms that are resilient against EW threats, low probability of detect, low probability of intersect, secure, have emission control, and efficient spectrum use. And the next capability we're looking at is assured positioning, navigation, and timing. So APNT, which you'll hear referred to as for the rest of the brief. So think those users are out there using GPS. We need to provide a capability that can't be degraded or denied. And then the next one's kind of a tongue twister, so bear with me. So tactical electronic C5 ISR EW convergence. So for that, think modular open systems approach, and that enables us to provide, there's another long acronym, C5 ISR EW, modular open suite of standards, so referred to as CMOS. So for CMOS, think converging those tactical comms, PNT, sensing, mission command capabilities into a single chassis. Looking at providing those capabilities using a card or module. Provides great benefits. We'll get into that later in the brief. So our approach, we use a find, fix, finish, and assess approach, which guides our capability development and management activities. So we find gaps in new solutions through review and analysis of strategy and concept documents, also by ongoing modernization efforts, and then deliberate capability and threat-based assessments. We fix identified gaps through researching and coordinating new ACIDs, JCIDs documents, or requirements, and supporting documentation. So for that, the gentleman I introduced earlier, Major Dom Adams, the requirement section from ACMTR really does a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to the fix section. We then finish implementing recommended changes through monitoring program solution development, integrating solutions across .mil-PF, and then advocating for user needs to ensure the final product is fully integrated and it meets the needs. So for that, think what my section kind of gets after, so capability, integration, and management. And then probably one of the most important sections of this process, we assess all aspects of capability modernization by conducting and participating in soldier touch points and operational assessments to learn insights on how and what we need to modernize. You probably sent through a lot of the sessions this morning. You kind of have an understanding of kind of where we are. So transitioning to large-scale combat operations. The senior leaders have alluded to the problem statement already. So the C2 systems that are currently fielded, they're too complex. They lack flexibility to adapt to the changing mission requirements, and they don't provide the commanders with effective or survivable capabilities to support the change. So through analysis, future combat operations, brigade and below, will most likely be highly mobile, distributed, and conducted predominantly on tactical radios and mounted mission command communication systems. So we'll talk our modernization strategy to get after our required capability sets in that problem statement. So our modernization strategy is aligned with the Army's continuous transformation. So for the first portion, we'll discuss our efforts that are aligned with transformation in contact and deliberate transformation. So during this phase, all our requirements are set, and efforts to modernize tactical radio systems with those requirements are ongoing. So we'll talk some of the .mil-PF efforts that are ongoing during this phase. So for the organization, if you sat through General Morrison's session this afternoon, he kind of talked the transition and the establishment of the division signal battalions. So with that, just to kind of foot stomp, what he kind of alluded to earlier. So provides opportunity to move the network complexity higher and optimizes training and development of signal soldiers. And then it kind of consolidates all those legacy equipment into one place. For the training aspect, so this was a result of C2 Fix and some of the CTC trends. So if you sat through Colonel Wacker's session this morning, he kind of talked C2 Fix and MARC, but that is a result of the ongoing C2 Fix effort. So really it's a system-of-system training approach that addresses gaps in institutional training. If you want more information on MARC, please refer to the AFCEA website and sit through Colonel Wacker's session. Great details on where the Army's going. For material, probably what a lot of the industry folks are kind of mostly interested in. So this is currently what we are working. So it's continuing crypto modernization, improving tactical data through developing and fielding those software-defined radios, and then achieving assured positioning, navigation, and timing through mounted and dismounted solutions, and then working to simplify radio management and configuration and loading. And then we're going to continue to develop resilient, large-scale contingency operation resistant waveforms, focused waveforms, and then prototype new systems from tech maturation and inform future material solutions. That kind of wraps up where we are in the transformation in contact and deliberate transformation phase. Next, we'll kind of talk the next phase, which is concept-driven transformation. So with this, new requirements will be needed to support future concepts. So based on prototyping efforts and ongoing assessments, ACM-TR will develop new requirements to converge mounted C5 ISR technology into an integrated architecture. So as we referred to earlier, CMOS. Additionally, we're addressing the need for a complementary dismounted MOSA for soldier carrier technology, and operational requirements for software to update and more rapidly modernize both the hardware MOSAs. And then we'll continue to learn from ASAult prototyping efforts and independent experimentations prior to the formal JSIDS requirements. So kind of break that down a little bit. So the current approach, so we talk CMOS, which is the suite of standards to reduce the size, weight, and power of C5I EW systems while increasing the flexibility, adaptability of those systems. So they're looking to integrate this in two ways. So a mounted form factor, referred to as CMFF, and a dismounted form factor, which we refer to as CDFF. So to converge those capabilities into a single chassis, they're going to use a card or module to, again, provide the mission command, tactical comms, assured PNT, and EW. And some of the benefits that would be provided from this type of capability, so pool radio resources, shared processing resources, shared data services, enhanced interoperability, reduced lifecycle costs, and then rapid insertion of new technology. And now we'll kind of talk what industry can do to support us in these efforts. So a few key attributes that I'll hit on. So one, core communications. So think assured voice, PLI, and ability to provide digital fires in all environments at the required range. The capabilities need to be survivable, so ruggedized, communicates during jamming, spoofing, in contested environments, and invades direction finding. Needs to be simple, so common form, fit, function, and human-machine interface as much as possible. Seamless compatibility with tactical EUDs, easy to maintain, and secure to the classification level of the information exchange. And then for converge, so we'll break this into three categories. Mounted, so provide the core communications that we just spoke on earlier. So COP, PNT, and then defensive electronic attack capabilities. For dismounted, pretty similar, but with this one we have to also account for the constraint. We don't want to increase the soldier equipment load as much as possible. For software, just the ability for it to be independent and synchronized to allow for the modernization of the firmware, waveform, and crypto updates that will be pushed. With that wraps up the ACM TR portion of the brief. I think holistically for the panel, a lot of the items that we briefed are synchronized with what our senior leaders are also putting out there. So I think we're headed in the right direction. Everyone's on the right path moving forward.
All right, and we have time for questions.
Leaving it to me to ask questions. I have questions.
Oh, no, the seat.
You might not like my questions either.
All right, CW5, Paul Sankey, NetCom, Command Chief Warrant Officer. So you mentioned units that were experimenting and implementing their kind of one-off solutions. Are you using those solutions to inform the requirements you're developing?
So yeah, I mean, and sometimes units are, it's the same concept, different material solutions. It's not for us, that's not the point. It's, okay, understand that's the need, and we need to do an operational requirement for the PM to be able to deliver, get it into a program of record with sustainment and .mil-PF and all that good stuff.
Just not to mislead anybody here, but I have a lot of research and development background in this stuff, right? I retired from the Army 30 years ago, and not only what I did in the Army, but I did it in industry. So there's some, we talk about common transport layer. One of the issues that goes back many years, maybe 15 at least, that we were trying to address is it isn't just a transport layer. It's that next one up, which implies having the need for a multi-protocol gateway or something like that, or you're pushing this problem out in the battlefield. Right? Because every one of those physical constructs in that transport layer handles TCP differently. If you want, particularly if you want to maintain the physical commodity of frequency spectrum, because they all operate under different rules. So is the concept of addressing that part, because I don't think you can get to a common network without some kind of multi-protocol gateway to maintain those efficiencies at the physical layer.
So one of the pieces, I'm going to answer this best I can. Please, Chief, or somebody jump in if I'm. So one of the things that's not on here is the common operating environment, because this is an ACM and STR, Cyber CDID. So common operating environments, Mission Command CDIDs, purview. So the common transport layer is the transport to get the data from point A to point B. There's the common operating environment really entails what data is traversing the network, how it's traversing, how it's tagged, and the Army's moving forward with that as we're looking at data fabric and efforts like that. Does that kind of answer the question?
Well, it's starting down that path. I guess I'm sort of looking for somebody really addressing that, because that's an age-old problem. It's not non-trivial, and pushing it down to the network operator in the battlefield to figure out what configuration he has to do for the TCP to work across a multi-physical environment. That's not trivial.
No, it's not a trivial thing, but I think that from a common transport layer, from a requirement standpoint is we have a number of different PEOs and PMs, and all of them are delivering different types of solutions. And so I think from a requirement standpoint, to bring it under an umbrella that we can control, and we can control resourcing and funding, the Common Transport Lab is going to start looking at a family of systems. And so when you think about all the different SATCOM systems that are out there today, right, I think the Common Transport Layer's main purpose, and John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but is really to get at having, for example, we have some SATCOM systems that are too heavy at a battalion, right? And so they need ultralight SATCOM systems because of the type of missions that they have. And so, under the WIN-T program, we had, the STTs, and all of them wasn't deployable in a C5 or, what units want to task and move. And so I think the Common Transport Layer is going to get at putting all that into one bucket so that SATCOM, PM SATCOM, and some of PM PEOC3T, we have a better control of the capabilities, whether they're small, medium, and larges, and having that commonality between the types of SATCOM systems.
So they have that responsibility to solve the multi-protocol
Yes.
kind of issue, because pushing that out to the young soldier out in the battalion to solve, because he's not connecting to this cloud data service is
No, the responsibility definitely falls in the six. And so as we build SAR guards and as we add more automation to what we do with UNO, we build those configs for the operators. So the operators, a lot of that, General Morrison talked about moving complexity to the division level. And I think that's where the G6, and that's where UNO is going to provide a lot of tools that automate those processes that you're talking about, so that the lower level battalions and brigades are not trying to build configs. They're not trying to figure out how to incorporate this network. No, that's going to be done at the 6, and we're going to push that down. We talked about the division signal battalion, FDU, and as we move assets into that signal battalion, and so when those assets are needed to go back down into the division footprint, the G6 and the signal battalion are going to coordinate on how to build those configs, how to incorporate that kit into a division's mission. And so a lot of that is still done in the G6, S6 lane.
one of the programs I was working on a few years ago was the issue to solve some, or the technical solution to solving some of these issues was to say, oh, we'll just push engineering down to the technical level and they'll figure it out. So that's not a solution. I don't think anybody in here would agree that that's a solution. So
Yeah, I mean, General Morrison spoke, you're not fighting the network. You want the network to be simple, intuitive. You want to be able to do a lot of that through automated processes in order to build configs and to send them down so that lower level soldiers, all they have to do is operate the kit.
So another research project that I was associated with about 15 years ago was in coordination with Naval Postgraduate School. It had to do with data modeling. And cloud services implies standardized data modeling, right? Where you can't share data. You solve the transport problems, you can't share data. So is there an initiative that continues with data modeling?
Yes, I would say that the CIO and his team, as well as Mission Command, are looking at data models. Obviously, as the Army moves to this data centricity, the Unified Data Reference Architecture came out recently from ASALT and the CIO talking about having this flattened network and creating a new data ecosystem for the Army. And so there was a panel earlier about tactical data fabric, being able to draw data so that the commander can make decisions on it. In our space with managed data, we're looking at more of a zero trust, being able to see data across the network, to be able to know where it is and make sure it's tagged properly so that we can apply zero trust on data. And utilizing ICANN, we can know who's accessing it. And we can do audit to see who's accessed certain applications, who's accessing certain data. And so, yes, I think the CIO came out with the metadata standards so that all mission areas now, fires, sustainment, protection, all those guys are mandated now that as they produce and consume data that they have to tag. And so from a standpoint of what we're doing with UNO is being able to see those data products be validated and then be able to know where they are on the network.
The initiative at the time included something that was labeled battle management language. You heard that term? Our NATO allies were involved in that because they had the same issue dealing with, joint
Yes.
environment of being able to share data between the countries of NATO and the U.S. Right?
Right.
So that became a big issue, and it was an effort to go down that path. I don't know if that's continued or not.
Yet,
How you doing? I'm Shane Cunningham with HashiCorp. It's nice to meet you guys. Appreciate the discussion about ECE and the infrastructure you're trying to deliver. Can you tell us a little bit more about the types of applications you want to be able to deliver at each echelon and how you expect this larger ecosystem of SIs to deliver applications to you to operate in this ecosystem?
So as far as what applications, as far as supporting the warfighting functions, and not to sound like just punting the ball, that's really, it's Mission Command CDID and what they're doing with Common Operating Environment, and looking at those apps to support the warfighting function, provide the data to feed the COP to inform commanders' decisions. So all that to say, I hate to say it's not our job, but that's really what Mission Command CDID is looking at.
My name is George Dalrymple. I'm contractor for the I am the lead architect or lead author of but as that one, you're looking for orchestration. Anything looking standardizing the way you want applications to talk to that. As long as it's talking to the
Other hard questions?
So you didn't really touch much on ComSec or communications security, but could you maybe touch on challenges that you see integrating KMI, key management infrastructure, at the tactical level and with the tactical radios?
so I'll take a stab at it. Working with requirements with crypto, there's a move to foot with IAP, which is a capability that's being prototyped that allows us to move crypto across the network. They're also prototyping some kits that are KMI aware, which means that some crypto devices will be enabled on the network so that now we don't carry crypto around the network. We're able to move it through the network and load devices. And so A lot of the crypto requirements are more DoD requirements that we've adopted in the Army. On top of that, as other centers of excellence develop capabilities that require certain types of crypto devices, a lot of times we don't have all the visibility on that from a standpoint of an ACOM, from a BOI perspective. NSA plays a big role in devices as they are designed and support certain mission sets. But from a standpoint of what we're doing is definitely getting into the realm of KMI, key management infrastructure, working with is it the IAP? I think it's the IAP architecture, to where now a lot of our devices are KMI aware, if that helps answer your question, Colonel Donovan. Good to see you back.
Other questions? There we go.
Gentlemen, I just got a quick question. Was the transition basically to ABACs as for ICAM management based on kind of its contextual approach, a little bit more robust contextual approach when it comes to credentials management, a little closer step to get you to zero trust while you still have to work on metadata and for data centricity? Is that kind of why, from a requirements perspective, we look toward implementing ABACs coming off of RBACs?
Well, from a requirements perspective, we left it open-ended, meaning we allowed the material developer, as well as the existing ICAM architecture that DoD has, that the Army has, and how we are looking at attributes across, because there are a number of different use cases for attribute-based access. And so, you think about, trade-out schools, students needing a certain identity and attribute in order to be in school temporarily. And so I think from a requirement standpoint, and sitting down with the community of interest and designing the requirements, we left it pretty much open-ended, but it's driving towards ABAC versus RBAC based on the use cases in the Army and what the DoD is doing in terms of attributes in ICAM. Did that answer your question, sir?
Other questions? On behalf of AFC, I thank you, panel.